Recently I got into beer brewing at home and I love it a lot, but there's one problem with it. It takes a lot of time, and I'm not talking about the waiting, I'm talking about the actual job. But I think I solved it. A couple of months ago I went to a beer brewing workshop. And with the full intention to not start another hobby, I kind of fell into the trap, and I did. It was so much fun and it almost felt like I was cooking on my barbecues. Of course I have to give a stern warning. Don't drink too much and follow the local laws of drinking beer. That's basically it. So as I was saying, I got into this workshop, and then we did some beer brewing and we came up with a local beer. We gave it our own name and it even tasted fantastic right out of the box. It was instant gratification. However, there was one problem, something that I didn't like about the process, and that was the amount of work that it took. Of course, you have the fun part, which is the actual cooking of it. You go into a barrel and you cook things and throw things in, and it's all activity. And then you have this long wait of fermentation, but then comes the bottling process. And even though drinking beer out of a bottle is something that's very satisfying, I didn't enjoy putting the beer into bottles. There was lots of cleaning, there was the filling, there was the capping, there was the stickering. That's a lot of work. So I went online to figure out how to solve this problem, and I found the solution, and it's called kegging. But with my limited knowledge, I reached out to Kegland and asked them if they could help me out. Which they did in a big way, with even sponsoring this video. So everything that you see, you can order on Kegland yourself. I'll put the information down below and the links so you can easily find it on their web shop. And now I'm really curious to find out if I actually solved all the work problem and we can make it a little easier, just like barbecue, so you can do it at home yourself in a short amount of time with a little bit of effort, but still have that good result. And that is what we're here to find out today. Can we brew beer in a way that we still control all the steps, get the end results, but without most of the work? Because beer brewing is very simple and it only contains a few steps. For step one, I'm going to be needing a brewing pot, and this is the Brewzilla. And the process that we're going to do in here is basically like making tea. I'm going to fill it up with 22 liters of water. I'm going to make a Weitzner style beer, which means I'm going to use a lot of wheat malt. And this wheat malt is basically the W in Weitzner. It basically consists of crushed wheat grains. And now I'm going to put in the base for every beer, which basically is crushed grains. And we need lots of it. Whew. And since I'm making my favorite beer recipe, I've got something special. This is caramelized grains. Let's put it all in, and to help the flow I'm going to put in some rice hulls. Now I'm going to give it a quick stir. I'm going to switch on the pump. In this process we're basically making tea out of the grains and weeds. The pump is running and it extracts all the sugars and the flavors. In my recipe there are lots of steps with different temperatures, because different temperatures extract different types of flavor and builds more flavor profile. So if you want to see all the details about that, check down the link down below in the video description, because that's where everything is written down. About 5 more minutes to go on the extraction process, which means basically the tea process where you get the sugars out. So it's time to check how much sugar we actually got. This is a floaty device that will tell me how much sugar is in our extraction. And the amount of sugar actually tells me the amount of alcohol that we're going to be ending up with. And this says we're going to be around the 5 to 6% alcohol in the beer. And I think that is just spot on. Time for the next step. Time to strain the weeds and the grains. So I'm just going to remove the pipes, remove the lid, and then lift it up. Whoa, boy. Now I'm going to take water from the water heater to rinse the grains and the weeds, so that we get out all of the sugars and all of the flavor that is still in the grain and the weed. Do you hear the drops? That is pure flavor coming out of the Brewzilla. The ingredient that I'm now going to add is very important. It's called hop. It's basically in every beer, and it determines the bitterness but also the shelf life of the beer. So for my beer I'm going to be adding these 2 hops. One is called Perle and the other one is called Hallertau Mittelfrüh, sorry. I'm going to measure out 30 grams. The second one is 45 grams. Spot on. I'm going to remove the straining basket so that we can focus on the next step, which is cooking. I'm going to bring the Brewzilla up to a boil. The first hop addition is to conserve and for the bitterness and flavor. And this is the main thing that I'm going to change, because instead of using bottles, I will be using this. Well, it doesn't look like it, but it's a keg. This brown bottle, the brown protects the sunlight, the beer against the sunlight, so it's important. Normally you have these stainless steel things. This is PET. Look at the size difference of these things. One little beer takes as much time as filling and cleaning and all the stuff as it takes to clean and fill a big one. Now, I know that people in the brewing community are like, duh, but here in Europe, in the Netherlands, Germany, and a lot of countries surrounding us, we all drink from the bottle. So yeah, well, you're not drinking from this bottle, but this is a keg, and it's kind of like a party thing. You bring your cold keg, you tap, and you get a good beer from it. But more importantly for me is that it saves me a lot of time. I don't need to set up a whole bottling production process. I just want to have fun drinking a couple of beer with my mates. 10 minutes before the end of the boil, I'm going to add the second amount of hop for flavor. It's the end of the brew, so it's time to cool down the beer. With brewing beer, it's very important to sanitize everything. And since you've been boiling, everything before this step has been sanitized. But now comes the cold part of the brew, the fermentation. And that means that we need to clean this, which you do with special chemicals. Water and elbow grease. The push of a button, it's going to transfer from my brewing vessel to the fermentation vessel, and now it actually looks like we're starting to make beer here. And the more air I get into this, the better the fermentation process. But maybe the most important part about fermentation is, of course, the yeast. The yeast, together with the sugar, is what is going to give us alcohol. So brewing beer is actually between cooking and baking. This is now all getting locked in and sealed real tight, so we can let the fermentation process begin. Of course, I'm gonna put on an airlock, and that's basically going to let the fermentation gases expand and just escape into the air, while the rest is just turning into beer with alcohol. I'm gonna put a jacket on and block out the sunlight so it doesn't kill the bacteria that are forming, because they are doing all the work for us. And I'm gonna store it in my office where it's nice and warm. Of course, I have a batch on standby that I've been fermenting for the last 3 weeks, so that you and I can actually taste this beer. Look at that. Isn't she beautiful? So all I need to do is just open up my CO2 bottle, put pressure in my fermentation bottle, and then it automatically ends up in my keg. Now I can put the keg in the Kegerator, which is a fridge for your beer keg. So you just put it in and connect the CO2 and the tap. And with the CO2 bottle at the back of the fridge, the tap on top, and the fridge basically keeping the kegs cold, well, it's a perfect setup. The only problem here is I gotta wait another 24 hours for the CO2 to go into the beer. Luckily, I already did that, so we can now open the tap. And this is what solves a big problem for me. I don't have to do all the bottling. I can just pour a beer, and I can keep the beer on tap for about half a year. A little bit more. There we go. The perfect beer. And basically, one of my favorite new hobbies just became a lot better. Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then leave us a big thumbs up and a comment down below. See you in the next one. Until then, drink smakelijk. Cheers.